Councillor Saad Al-Mawa, WPTU, Chairman of the Race Relations and Equal Opportunities Committee, Birmingham City Council.
वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह सिख चैनल के प्यारे दर्शकों सिख चैनल वालों आप जी का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है सरदूल सिंह मरवा वालों आप जी जी आया Sikhs and Politics, a political show which we launched and talking about the current issues, what's happening here in UK. And as you know, we covered a number of things. Today, I'm very pleased to say I'm joined by Lord Hunt of King's Heath, who has been in the National Health Service, one way or the other, Minister of and spokesman and chair of NHS Trust, number of other things he's been involved with. Especially, I'm sure, if I can call on anybody to be expert on one topic, National Health Service, that is Lord Hunt. And let's welcome him. Lord Hunt, thank you very much for coming. Welcome to the Sikh channel. And we have launched this program, Sikhs and Politics, a political show where we will be discussing the issues of the day and what's actually happening around us. Since you have most of your political life, I think, in National Health Service, and you are now chairing Heart of England Foundation Trust in Birmingham, or Solihull, around, and which covers a Good Hope Hospital, and maybe something else you can tell us. So if you want to just start off with your area of expertise, and you're now a chair of NHS. When did you become chair of the Heartlands Hospital?
Well, good evening. It's great to be here, and I became chair of Heart of England NHS Foundation Trust in 2011. So I've been chairman for 3 years now.
Right.
And it's a huge trust. We serve 1 million patients.
Right.
We run 3 hospitals, Solihull, Heartlands, and Good Hope in Sutton Coldfield.
Yeah.
We also run the chest clinic in town. We spend £600 million a year.
That's big.
We have 11,000 staff.
Right.
And the staff do a fantastic job treating patients.
Right, right. Philip, if I may call you Philip, as I said in my introduction, you have devoted most of your political life in the National Health Service. You've been a minister in the last government. And if I may start, successive governments have always said, whoever came, they start to blame each other and try to fix National Health Service. And something is wrong, or maybe not wrong. And who is right? And if the Conservatives come in, they say, Labour haven't done this. The waiting list is so long. If we just currently look at the accident and emergency service, 4 hours of waiting time, and they miss their targets, right? What is actually going on?
Well, let me start by saying the National Health Service is something special to us.
Absolutely.
In the UK. I mean, no other health system is like it. That we, all of us, are entitled to free healthcare.
Yep.
And comprehensive healthcare. And so we all rely on the National Health Service. Most of us support it. But inevitably, it has its pressures as well. And if I can go back, I'm going to come on to accident and emergency department.
Yes,
because
okay.
It's a very important question.
Yep.
If you go back to 1997, the new Labour government came into power. And we were faced with an NHS that had been starved of investment. And we turned that round. We increased the amount of money going into the NHS by 1/3. And as a result, we were able to employ more people. We built new hospitals, 100 new hospitals. And waiting times came down dramatically. You know, in 97, people had to wait as long as 18 months
yes,
for an operation. We brought that down to 18 weeks. And the public noticed the difference. There's been an opinion poll called the British Attitude Survey, where they've asked the same question about the health service since 1983. Do you think it's doing a good job?
Yeah.
And you know, in 1997, only 38% of people thought it was doing a good job.
Low as that?
As low as that. In 2010, it was 70%. So people had noticed a big difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a change of government. And you asked about politics. You know, why do political parties talk about the National Health Service all the time? Reason is, it's important to us. Every one of us uses the NHS. And so it's right that politicians like myself, whatever party we come from, spend a lot of time thinking about the NHS, how it can be improved. And I think what's happened since 2010 is we've had big financial cutbacks in the public sector. And that has had an impact on the health service as well. And so if you take accident and emergency departments, what's been happening is more people have come through.
Well, can I just stop you before you go there? But this coalition government now, the cutbacks are enormous. Not only in NHS and other departments. So that obviously going to have an impact on the National Health Service and ultimately impact on the patients who are waiting either for operations or going into the A&E or whatever. But if the Labour government put the investments in, now this government's not investing, although they're saying they're investing, but there are redundancies, lack of training, all sorts of things. Would you think that was the impact on because of the A&E?
Because accident and emergency departments are, if you like, they reflect what's happening in the health service as a whole. So, for instance, if it's difficult to get primary care treatment, you know, to see your general practitioner, you go to A&E because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you'll be seen. We've seen cutbacks in primary care. If you are an old person, we've got a lot of older people in our society, vulnerable people. If they're brought into accident and emergency departments and they're admitted, often they stay in hospital a long time because we've lost a lot of the community support that would enable them to be discharged quickly back into their own home or into some other care facility. So beds in hospitals get people there who shouldn't be there, but they can't be discharged. And so you come into A&E and you can't then be moved into a hospital bed because we can't discharge people enough. So the A&E problem is a symptom of a general problem in the National Health Service. And you know, we know that in this country, as in many countries, that we have a growing older population. More and more people who are in their 70s and 80s. People are living longer, which is great, but when they become ill, they're often very frail. And the reason that the health service is struggling is because experts reckon, just to keep pace with the growing number of older people, you need to increase your budget by about 4 to 5% in real terms every year. And what we're getting is a 0.25% real terms growth. So the money's got much tighter. And you're right, you know, nurse numbers have gone down. And as a result, the system is really struggling.
Well, when you get the questions on Wednesday to Prime Minister Questions Time, and you know, you hear this, so many doctors are coming, so many nurses are coming, and the figures are either plucked out of the air or they are real figures. Then the opposition obviously comes in and says, oh, that is not the real figures. And where the NHS is free of delivery, as you rightly said, we have those problems. Investment is needed in other departments, surely, but because everybody, sooner, later, or younger, older, are going to get ill, and they've got to be treated. And if the investment isn't there, those people are not going to get treated.
They're either not going to get treated or they're going to have to wait a long time for treatment. And I don't want to go back to the bad old days. When you had long waiting lists. You know, I was very proud of the fact that we got waiting times down to 4 hours in A&E and 18 weeks if you need an operation. And getting it in good quality facilities because of the new hospitals that we have built. But there is a risk. If we don't invest in our health service, things will get worse. Waiting times will get longer. And then people start to lose confidence in the health service. And, you know, there's no doubt about it that as society has more of an ageing population, you know, older people do make more demands on the health service.
Absolutely.
And often it's not just one illness, it's a number of illnesses all together. And if I go through my hospitals and I talk to patients, you can see that many of them are very, very frail. And they can't just be discharged. You know, they can't come in for a day or 2 days.
No.
They have to be helped to get back on their feet, helped to feed themselves again. And this takes time, it takes resource.
Yeah, but then again, there's another problem. The elderly, some of them live by themselves, right? I mean, sometimes we, as Asian Sikhs, say these things. We are somewhat lucky, but that may be diminishing slowly, that the parents, the elderly, are looked after by their families. And where the indigenous population, some of them are living by themselves, if they're not in hospital, if they are discharged, then nobody's to look after them. That's another
so
problem.
Right. If you talk about the indigenous population, when I was born in 1949, and my grandmother came to live with us when she was about 60 or 70. Mm-hmm. And that was the norm.
Yes.
You know, we had larger families. But life's changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people don't do that anymore.
No.
And so we have, and also, of course, with the divorce rate, you have many more single people.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid us men, we tend to die earlier, don't we?
Well,
so often, many women in particular
by themselves.
Are by themselves. And so let's say an older person's had a fall, and she's brought into hospital, she's helped to get better, but you can't just send her back.
No.
Unless you're confident that if she goes back into her home, she's not going to fall over again. And the trouble is that, you know, hospitals are not great environments for people.
No, absolutely not.
And people who stay in there a long time, they sometimes lose the ability to look after themselves.
Right.
I hate it. You know, the awful thing is when someone's been looking after themselves in their own home, but something's happened, they've come into hospital, and then they can't go back to their own home.
No.
And they have to go to a nursing home.
Yeah.
And
Which
that's
is
sad, you know,
sad,
because
very
our
sad.
job should be to help people live as independent a life as possible.
Yeah, that's a sad state of affairs. If I can just move on, Philip, sorry. The same thing, or is it not, the Stafford or Mid Staffordshire Hospital, which has been in the news for a very long time now. And the Secretary of State, Jeremy Hunt, has now dissolved the NHS Trust from there. And what actually was wrong, where did it all fail? But if it did fail very quickly and nobody stepped in, and when they did step in, that was a bit too late.
Well, this is the Mid Staffordshire NHS Trust, which is based in Stafford, a town not far from Birmingham. And it had some real problems in the way it was treating patients. The people felt that the staff were not as caring as they could be. And a review of their mortality rate suggested that the death rate of patients in that hospital was higher than it ought to be. And because there was such a lot of concern, my current boss, Andy Burnham, when he was Secretary of State, he ordered an inquiry. This current government turned it into a public inquiry, and they asked a QC, a senior lawyer, Mr. Francis, to come and look at it. And he issued 2 reports. What he basically said is that the people running the hospital, particularly the board of the hospital, were too focused on the finances of the hospital and on seeking foundation trust status. And they lost sight of the fact that their first responsibility was the quality of care. That, I think, has been a wake-up call for all of us. And I know in my board at Heart of England, we have our money problems. We worry about staffing numbers. But at the end of the day, I think what Francis has taught us is that whatever problem you have, if your #1 focus isn't on the quality of patient care, then you're going to have problems.
Well, then, now, if the NHS trust is dissolved and the patients from that hospital are going into neighbouring, maybe Cannock, Wolverhampton, Birmingham maybe, or all over, wouldn't that have an impact on the patients who are going to travel 40, 30 miles?
I think it's very sad for the people of Stafford and the surrounding area that this has happened. I would have hoped that the government would have done more to actually enable the Staffordshire Hospital to keep most of its services. But that's not what's happened. It's losing a lot of its services. And some of the services actually have to go to Stoke-on-Trent. Some will go, as you said, to Cannock and to Wolverhampton. Some services will still be provided locally, but certainly not in the way they were in the past. And that is a pity, and I think the people in Stafford have deserved better than that.
Yeah, well, it's a vast building. What would happen to that? Then obviously then you'll have that building lying empty and the resources obviously gone haywire. And the people of Stafford, and they will not in the long run have a local hospital.
I think they'll have a local hospital, but it just won't. It won't be what we call a district general hospital. It won't be the normal acute hospital that has an accident and emergency department. Babies are born there. It provides surgery services. It's going to have less than it did in the past. Hopefully they'll find a room, they'll use the hospital for other things, perhaps rehabilitation. For instance, say a patient has to go to Stoke to be treated. Maybe they can come back to Stafford after they've had, say, an operation and to recuperate there. So you can use it for those purposes.
Right.
But I still think that the government could have done more to have protected those services in Stafford. After all, the people of Stafford should not be penalised because the board of that organisation didn't do a proper job. That seems to me to be unfair.
Absolutely. This government also tried a number of other things. GPs' own budgets, things like that. And that really hasn't taken off, which they thought it probably would do. And what's actually, do you think, gone wrong there? Was that the right thing to do? Give the money to the local GPs who are under a lot of pressure anyway?
Well, one thing I've learned as a health minister is that you can dabble with the structure.
Right.
But often it has no impact or a negative impact on what's happening where patients get treated. And this is a good example of this. In the election, Mr Cameron, the leader of the Conservative Party, now Prime Minister, said that they weren't going to reorganise the health service. But when they got into power, their Secretary of State for Health then, Andrew Lansley, it's the first thing he did. And he totally, disrupted the service. And 2 years have been spent putting the new changes in. The heart of it is that general practitioners should be given a budget and collectively in areas decide where the money should be spent. Now, I think GPs are very good people, and I've got no problem in them being involved in these decisions. But what I do object to is that so much time and money, £3 billion has been spent on this change, none of which is impacting on the quality of patient care.
Well, that's
£3 billion
there's a lot of money.
Could have been spent shoring up Stafford Hospital or giving me more nurses. What a waste of money.
Well, the reason I'm saying that is it's at the moment or in the very near past has been that a patient have to wait a week to get an appointment with the GP. And if GP is burdened with this kind of other work he has to do, then the patient will have to wait longer to get an appointment.
I think, I've no problem in GPs having a say in how we're going to plan services because clearly, every day they see patients, they know some of the problems.